to try as much as possible to codify the regulations and the competition transition charge, which was a provision in the old act as well as the new act. So what we now have is that both the processes for applying for eligibility as well as the determination of competition transition charge are now in the same regulatory instruments. And that will make it easier for any potential eligible customer or the operator to consult easily instead of having to deal with two different regulatory documents. So competition transition charge is based on the provision of the Act, and it means a revenue that a disco or a trading licensee can be allowed to earn, which will come from other customers, which as a result of the need to meet its total revenue requirement that has been impacted by an exit of eligible customers. Because the discos are not allowed to earn more than what the Commission has determined for them, but if they lose a customer to eligibility, there is a potential for them to lose their revenue, part of their revenue requirement. So there is a provision in the Act that the Commission may at a point in time review any application for such competition transition charge and make a determination and grant approval to the distribution company to earn such a revenue. So such revenue will come from such eligible customers, which the customer will pay in addition to paying for the energy such customer gets from the new supplier supplying its energy. So that's another thing. So one other thing we've also look at has to do with the sequencing. In the old regulations, the market participation agreement comes before the grants of eligibility. So the Commission has corrected that, because for you to participate as a market participant, for you to be able to register with the market operator, you ought to have been granted either a permit or eligibility status or license. So now market participation agreement will have to come after you have secured that eligibility from the Commission. So the application process too now has been amended. Previously, there were some concerns with respect to the clarity of the application process, but now we've now provided such clarity. We now ensure that the stages for application process is now 3. So you have the first process, which you file certain documents for Commission to determine your eligibility to see whether you are an eligible customer. What that does is to help the customer from undergoing a rigorous process of signing an agreement with their potential suppliers and other related agreements, only for them to now come to the Commission, and the Commission will now say, all you have done has amounted to a waste because you are not really eligible. So, but if they come, they submit just few information, and the Commission will make a determination of their eligibility before they now proceed to sign the necessary agreements and come back to the Commission for conferment of that eligibility. So those are a few number of things that the Commission has made to a few number of changes the Commission has made to the regulation, which probably can be useful for the media. There are some other things that are technical in nature that may not necessarily be useful for the media at this material time. The regulation is already on our website, and you can familiarize yourself with it. And if you have any questions, you can touch base with the Commission. You are our friends, so we will always be willing to listen to you. The third issue that I would like to address has to do with the rate application. Permit me to go on a memory lane. And I think it's not new to you that last year the Commission received application from the distribution licensees for a review of their rates. And as part of the rules of the Commission, we conducted hearings where we invited the consumer groups, advocates, then consumer group advocates, then we invited Nigerian Society of Engineers rather. We invited Manufacturer Association of Nigeria. We invited NOHIS as an appellate of Nigeria Labour Congress and many other stakeholders. So the hearing was conducted in such a manner that the discourse were put on the spot to justify why the Commission should approve their application. And we also invited some interveners, some experts in the field that interrogated the distribution companies on their application. Also, consumer advocates also interrogated the application. At the end of the day, the Commission made a resolution on the application. And in December, the order was released, which was widely reported by the media, by you, which we really appreciate. And then in the order, it was provided that there will be constant review to ensure that the customers do not suffer the problem of rate shock. Even though in that particular order, the rates were frozen on the basis of the consideration by the policymakers and also on the basis of trying as much as possible to ensure that we also put in place the necessary enforcement that the Commission will need to enforce, improve service delivery. So fast track from that, a lot of work has actually gone into the process, into the application of the discourse. And most importantly, there was serious concentration on service delivery. Of course, we all understand, and I think the media, especially the energy correspondents we have here, you understand the value chain, where we have the generation companies, we have the transmission companies, and we have the distribution companies. Of course, the distribution companies serve as the interface between the sector or between the industry and the customers. And whatever the experience of the customers, any grievances are directed at them. Even sometimes, the issues leading to that grievances might not necessarily be within their control. For instance, if there is an issue with generation, and also if there is an issue with transmission. So, and I'm sure since the last media engagements, we've experienced different changes to the level of service provision in the sector. I think in December, there was an improvement in the quality of service, but leading to January, there were some challenges. And one of the reasons for that challenges has to do with payments. Because the tariff is frozen at the rates obtainable as at December 2022, the payment to the generation companies has significantly gone down relative to their cost of operation. As you are aware, we have about 75% of our generation coming from thermal generation companies. That is a company making use of gas. That is gas-dependent generators. While about 25% comes from the hydro, making use of God-given water. As we may think that, okay, for water is God-given, but the machines put in place for processing the water into electron requires investment and has to be recovered. And even aside from that, there is water rates payable by the hydro generators. So on the basis of looking at the gas as a case, the gas as of December 2022 was $2.18 per M-scoff. But when you look at that $2.18 as at that time, based on the FX, based on the exchange rate, it amounted to maybe, let's say, 900 or 1,000, thereabouts, depending on the exchange rate you used at the time. But fast track to December 2023, if you convert the same $2.18 into Naira, you know how much it is based on the FX rates. And that speaks to the change in the cost of operation. For instance, that means that the gas that a Genco will buy for 900 Naira, for instance, has probably gone to 2,000 plus just because of FX rates. And I would like to state that, of course, we can look at it that way, but one thing we need to realize is that as at the time the FX rate was 400, it means that FX rate was being subsidized. That means that you had two different sets of subsidies on the power sector then, likewise the petroleum sector. One thing was that the price at that time computed at roughly 400, 450 FX rates. The one that was transferred to the customers was less than what it's supposed to be. Let's say it was supposed to be 80 Naira or 75 Naira, but only 70 Naira was transferred to the customers. That means that you have a direct or open subsidy of 5 Naira. But the fact that a FX as at that time was also supposed to be, let's say, 600 or 700, but it was 450. That also creates additional subsidy that is hidden, which can be called hidden subsidy or indirect subsidy, which were both borne by the government. But because of liberalization of FX market now, that is unification of exchange rates, we now clearly see that the hidden subsidy now has become an open subsidy, and all has come to now all has now made up the total subsidy that was branded in the news by you, our friends, because I've read a lot of news where you talked about the subsidy based on the order released by the commission then. So on this note, but because the tariff payable by the customers had not changed, that really affected the payment to the generation companies, and that led to the situation whereby the generation companies were unable to also make payment for gas, and that also resulted in reduction in gas supply to the power sector, because there is competitive demand for gas now. You have so many other companies that require gas and pay for it. So in short, the issue has compounded the performance of the sector, and that led to the dip in generation we experienced recently. Of course, things are picking up now. So back to the application of the distribution by the distribution companies. So further review went into, first and foremost, you recall we classified customers on the basis of the hours of service, where you have band A, band B, band C, band D, band E, based on the service level. So in the commission went to review the performance of those feeders, leveraging on technology. Leveraging technology to be able to monitor the performance of the feeders on near real time. And on that basis, the commission has decided that many of the feeders that the discos currently brandish as band A are not meeting the band A service. And as such, the feeders are being ordered to be downgraded immediately as a way of protecting consumers. So that is one thing. So on that basis, we have over 3,000 feeders, that is discos feeders, and initially we had over 875 feeders as band A feeders based on the classification by the distribution companies. But upon reviewing those feeders' performance, the Commission has reduced it to under 500 feeders now, which qualifies as band A feeders, that is the feeders that are currently meeting the 20 hours average service. So when you look at that 480 something feeders, that is under 500 feeders, vis-a-vis the over 3,000 feeders we have, the computation shows that you have just 17% of the total feeders of the distribution companies now qualified as band A feeders. And in that case, when you look at that 17%, if you look at where those feeders are critically, it's estimated that just under 15% of customers are benefiting from those feeders, that is, are currently connected to those feeders. Meaning that we have 70% of the total distribution feeders, but we have less than 15% of customers currently benefiting that service. So on the basis of that, and you'll recall that I said that other feeders that are not meeting the 24-hour supply have been asked to be downgraded immediately with strict compliance and strong enforcement action. So the Commission now set and review further the application by the distribution companies and have decided that only the 17% feeders and less than 15% customers will be affected by any rate increase that the Commission will ever approve for the distribution company. So further to that, the Commission has issued an order which is titled April 2024 Supplementary Order. That is supplementary to the order issued in December 2023, effective January 2024. So the April supplementary order takes effect from today. And in that order, the Commission has approved a rate review of 225 naira per kilowatt hour for just under 15% of the customer population in NESI. So that means that less than 15% of the customers will be affected. And you recall the number, I'm sure you are aware of the number of customers we have in NESI. And these are the customers that have been proven to be enjoying 20 hours average of supply. I would also like to repeat what I said earlier on, that many of the customers, if that classified as band A customers, will not be affected. Many of the customers previously classified as band A customers will not be affected. In fact, majority of them will not be affected. Only 15%, less than 15% of the customers' population will now be affected by this rate review. And the reason for this includes, first and foremost, when you look at the state of infrastructure in NESI, the quality of infrastructure in NESI varies from one location to the other. There are certain locations where without any additional investments, the distribution companies are also the transmission companies, based on the investment previously made, can deliver a minimum of 20 hours per day. But in some locations, there will be a need for improvement in quality of the infrastructure before quality of supply can improve. So the customers that are going to be affected are the customers that are living in locations where no investment is required to meet the 20 hours service, and they constitute less than 15% of the customer population. That is that. Then for other customers, are they neglected? No. They will still continue to get service, but not up to 20 hours. And there are targets that are being provided for the distribution companies, which the Commission will monitor and review from time to time to ensure the migration of other customers to better service. Then, as part of the enforcement mechanism for this, because the rate that will be paid, which is 225, is just above 3 times the existing rates, requires that the customer truly get the service. So I've told you that the Commission is leveraging on technology to ensure that we get access directly to the distribution system and get the data, as the data is being fed from the meters, the smart meters that have been installed on the feeders. We are getting in real time or near real time. We don't give the discos the opportunity of any manipulation of data. That is one thing. Secondly, the order provides that the discos must be publishing the 7-day rolling average of service delivery on each of the feeders on their website. What that means is that there will be a 7-day rolling average, this level of service on a particular feeder. Also, for each of the prior 7 days, they will also publish that. We've given them the template, and that has already started. And for customer identification of the feeder, so that we can get self-reporting from the customers, we've now ensured that instead of using some notations for feeder identification, discos have been mandated to put names to those feeders. What I mean by that is, if you list a feeder now, you can use any nomenclature you want based on the guidelines, but you now need to make a list, at least 3 to 4 names of the streets that are covered by that particular feeder, such that the customer on that feeder will be able to relay that truly, oh, this is Maitama, so in Maitama, so address in Maitama, a street in Maitama, and so on and so forth. And customer can really question the integrity of the data published by the discos, and also report to the Commission as well. As part of the enforcement, monitoring and evaluation mechanism, discos have also been mandated to set up rapid response team in different locations. That is, in the locations that those feeders that are going to be affected by the rate review are located, so that the customers in those areas can have access to near real-time response from the distribution companies. So the discos have been mandated to publish the contacts of the rapid response teams in each of the locations where the customers that will be affected by these rates are residents. So we are starting with that. As I said, we are not neglecting other customers, but we are commencing with the customers that are going to be affected by this rate review first and foremost. And we migrate or continue to review and ensure that this rapid response team and all other mechanisms being put in place for performance monitoring also cascade to other customer clusters. That is one thing. The other thing we put in the order is that for a failure to meet the service commitment for 7 consecutive days, the feeders will be downgraded immediately to the service level that the discos is able to provide on that feeder. That is another thing. The other provision is that where a disco fails to meet the service commitment for 2 consecutive days, by third day at 10 a.m., the discos must publish an explanation, and also via bulk SMS contact the affected customers on the feeder and provide explanation on why the service was unable to meet the service required for the 2 days, and also submit to the commission the explanation, as well as providing the updates on the status for the restoration of the service to the service commitment level. The other provision in the order is where a disco fails to meet the service level to the band A customers, that is the less than 15% customers that are going to be affected by the rate review. For a month, the discos is not only ordered to downgrade the feeders, but they will pay compensation to the customers in line with an existing order on migration of feeders. So those things are put in there to ensure that we have adequate protection for customers, as well as ensuring that we monitor the performance of the utility, face-to-face the commitment to service delivery. The other we have in-house, which is not clearly expressly stated in the order, has to do with the setting up of situation room by the Commission. The Commission currently has a team of in-house staff. They've constituted what we call situation room to ensure that they are on ground as they monitor the performance of the distribution companies near real time. They are also able to provide feedback and directive to the field officers of the distribution companies. Apart from the staff of the Commission, we have in the situation room staff of the transmission company of Nigeria, because it's very critical. Because if transmission companies is unable to wheel power to a particular location, there is nothing in there for the discos to distribute to the customers. Then in the situation room, we also have the staff of the distribution companies. And that includes their technical officers, led by the chief technical officers. The MDs, of course, is an honorary member of the situation room, but the chief technical officer is a mandate member of the situation room. Then their commercial staff are also are also members of the situation room. We want to ensure that we don't just put out any order revising the rate to 225 naira per kilowatt hour for a subset of the customers, and at the end of the day we just leave the customers without protecting their interest. Because at the commission it is believed that we exist because of customers. This is because without customers there won't be any products, and without product there won't be any seller, no distribution, no transmission, no generation. And without those, there won't be anything to regulate. So regulator exists because of customers in one way or the other. Even though based on the provision of the Act, we are to ensure fair regulation, balancing regulations. And in doing that, sometimes the interest of every group will have to be protected. And in doing so, you may not be, some group may feel that, oh, my interest is not 100% protected. That is the challenge with the balancing regulation. So we've put all those in place, as I said, to ensure that we protect the customers, and starting especially the few customers that will be affected by this order on the rate application. The order will soon be released to the press, but we feel that it's important for us to engage with you first as our partner in the business, just to ensure that there is no misrepresentation of facts, because your duty is to inform but not to misinform. And in doing your duty, we hold you the responsibility of explaining certain things to you, because there will always be information asymmetry. Because this is not what you deal with day in, day out. But we that deal with that every day, the information we have and the actions we have taken, we need to provide explanation to the Nigerian public. On this note, I will stop here now first. As I said, before I stop, enforcement of investments is key, and that has not changed. DISCOs have been mandated to make certain investments, and the Commission is monitoring it. But investment in the sector goes beyond the distribution level. It covers the transmission and also the generation segments. But one thing is clear: investments will only follow the path to recovery. And that's been the reason the level of investment we have witnessed in the sector so far is lower than what would be expected because of the challenge of recovery. But we are trying to ensure that we make the sector as much lucrative as possible in order to attract more investment into the sector. And the Commission is poised and determined, and we have able staff to ensure that we achieve that. But we need support of the media, most importantly, because you control the narration and you control the larger populace. On social media, you are out there. On print media, you are there. And whatever the information you pass out there, people tend to believe. So it's important, and I believe you also hold this nation the responsibility of fair reporting, transparent reporting, and don't mislead or misinform the populace. So that is really key. One other thing is that when you look at the affected customers, they have the highest metering rates compared to other customers. It is estimated that they have the metering rate of between 70 to 80%, and the efforts are ongoing to ensure that those customers that are going to be affected by this rate review, we close the metering gap. There are some regulatory processes that the Commission is put in place to fast track the rollout of meters. One, to all customers, but most especially to the customers that are going to be affected by these rates. In addition to that, the Commission is working on having some sort of liberalization in the determination of the price and demand for meter. That is currently being worked on, and in due course, you will be notified of the final decision of the Commission on that. We've heard that many people have actually made case for full liberalization of meters. But the challenge with that is you need to be able to have quality control first, and also the way the operation of the distributions are currently set up. There are certain meters that may not be able to speak to or communicate with some of the platforms of some of the discos. So you need to just now ensure that even when you are promoting liberalization, you need to ensure that you go step by step, do some sort of liberalization, but don't open it up fully, completely. Because we run the risk of making customers suffer. For instance, if you do open liberalization, complete liberalization, whereby I can just walk into the shop and purchase a meter. One is the quality of the meter. The second thing is such customer may get to its utility, that is the disco, and has the disco to come and install the meter. And the disco just tells the customer that, oh, I'm sorry, this meter does not have the required communication module to my vending platform. The customers will have suffered in terms of the money he paid, and also the psychological problem attaching to the fact that I paid and I've passed through this serious process, and only for you to tell me that this meter cannot communicate with you to your vending platform. So we need to be gradual, we need to be strategic in the level of liberalization we adopt. But as we go, things will continue to move, and we continue to move along. So the other thing is the government itself, the federal government, is also currently working on a number of metering programs, one of which we are quite aware is the distribution rehabilitation program that includes metering, which is going to be financed using the loan from the World Bank. The federal government is doing everything possible to finalize on that. The federal government has also put in place what we call Presidential Metering Initiatives, which is PMI, and I'm sure by the time the minister addresses the nation, as well as the SA Energy to the president, they will provide further updates on that. All are the efforts geared towards ensuring that we close the metering gap in NESI. But as I told you, any metering program, we first of all start with the 20% that are currently not fully metered among the affected customers. That is the customers in the new Band A clusters. But as a stopgap, pending the time the meters will be rolled out to those customers, the Commission has also strengthened its enforcement of capping order to ensure that we discos comply with the cap. That is the maximum amount of energy amounts they can bill the customers that are currently unmetered. Both the affected the customers in the less than 15% population, as well as other customers, and we continue to monitor. So on this note, I will stop here and I'll wait your questions. And in the course of the questions, if there are need for my colleagues to also intervene, they will provide the necessary support. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Vice Chairman, for the elaborate explanation. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I believe you have your plate full. The Vice Chairman started with a capping order to eligible customer regulation, tariff application, and metering. And I believe the one that may likely interest you the most is the...
Okay, we've just been listening to Musiliu Oseni, who is the Vice Chairman of the Market Competition Rates, which falls under the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Now, what we've seen is a confirmation of the electricity tariff hike speculation, of course, that has been floating around the media for some time, and some clarification towards how this will be implemented. The highlight of that hike being that only those on Band A feeders will be affected, meaning those who are experiencing, currently rather enjoying a minimum of 20 hours of electricity supply per day, which he stated is about 15% of customers. Those are the only people who will be impacted by the electricity tariff hike to 225 naira per kilowatt hour.
I think what's also insightful, Vimba, even though you've mentioned what we should focus on is that initially there were 3,000 Band A feeders according to what was disclosed to NERC. But upon review, they found that the performance has made it. We now see that only under 500 feeders can actually be categorized as Band A. So in a way, it's quite glaring that there's been some deception.
Absolutely.
And people have been paying or believe they have been paying for what they've not been receiving. And just 17% of the total feeders of the discourse now qualify as Band A feeders. It's really insightful, but I also like the fact that they have mentioned that there will be some measures to ensure that with this hike, people actually get what they pay for and no one will be neglected as we go on. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about this a lot later, but we'll be right back on Newsday. Please stay with us.